Hi, and welcome back to Museum at Home. This week we are travelling all the way out to the Valley of Mexico, the home of the Aztec civilization. The Aztecs were a tribe of warriors who settled in modern-day Mexico in the 13th century, so about 800 years ago. They are a really fascinating bunch. They had their own system of gods, led by the god of the sun. They had their own calendar. They performed human sacrifices. They were great warriors and sportsmen. And along with the earlier Mayan civilization, they were some of the first cultures to celebrate chocolate. We are going to look at an object which can tell us lots more about Aztec civilization. So, take a look at this object. It is kept at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Now, what are your first impressions when you see this object? Isn't it unusual? It's very different to anything we've seen so far. How would you describe it? I think that the first thing is wow. Just look at all of that gold. It's an impressive and perhaps even a slightly terrifying looking object. But what is it? Well, let's use our key question words to try and frame our thoughts about this. What? What shape is it? What material? What lines and designs can we see on it? What parts of it can be seen? Is it just one part or many? Can bits move? Who? Who would own such a precious thing? Who made it? And who had the skills to make it so beautiful? Why? Why was this object made? Why is it this shape? Why is it important to the people who used it? How? How was it made? How was it used? And where? Where was it kept? In a home? In a palace? In a temple? Or somewhere entirely different? First of all, have a think about the shape. What shape can you see? I can make out an animal. Can you spot what kind of animal it is? Yes, it is a snake. Look at those huge fangs, that hissing tongue and that slithery, wavy body. What do we think of when we think of snakes? What kind of words do we often think of? How would you describe a snake? Well, very often we give snakes very negative characteristics. We think of snakes as untrustworthy or deceptive or even dangerous. But not the Aztec civilization. To the Aztecs, snakes were an important animal. They often represented rulers, emperors, and even gods, like the feathery snake god called Quetzalcoatl. Because they were important to Aztecs, they pop up very often in Aztec arts. But take a closer look at that tongue, that hissing tongue of the snake. It looks a bit wobbly, doesn't it? Well, it is wobbly because the tongue of the snake is designed to move. It's a separate piece and it's connected to the serpent's head, and it can actually move up and down and even stick out further. Have a look at this picture. You can see the tongue has come out a lot more than in the first picture. So it has got a movable tongue. Why would it have a movable tongue? Let's find out. Now, first of all, why would an object like this have been made? What's its use? Is it decoration or is it something more functional? Well, this is something called a labret, and it is an ornament which goes in a person's lower lip through a piercing so that it looks as though the snake is emerging, is coming out from the person's chin. The plain part at the back that you can see, that would sit within the person's mouth, so you wouldn't see that part. What you would see is the snake coming out. Now, to me, that sounds incredibly painful, but labrets were used by the Aztecs to show importance. certain warriors were given labrets. They weren't worn all the time, but on special occasions they would be worn, in ceremonies or during battle. And rulers, emperors, would wear one as well. And an important part of the ceremony which would take place when someone became the emperor, well, that would involve this person being given a labret and having it put in their mouth. Ouch. And what do we think that this could be made out of? Well, what would you guess? I bet you've probably got it already. It is made out of gold. The Aztecs were great gold workers. They knew how to make gold do what they wanted. But they considered gold to be more than just a metal, something that could be used to decorate things. The Aztec civilization believed that gold was the waste from the gods themselves, and that it was deposited regularly in the underworld where they got it. Many believed that it possessed something called tonali, the spirit of life itself, the essence of life, and that's what its shining colour was all about. They linked it to the power of the sun, the golden sun, and the gold that we find in the earth. So gold labrets were reserved for emperors or for the very highest in the nobility. And you can imagine an Aztec emperor wearing this labret. The gold snake would be dazzling, almost blinding in the sunlight. And as the emperor speaks, as his face moves up and down, the gold snake's tongue would move up and down as well, and side to side. It would be a terrifying and an amazing sight. Now, Aztec metal workers would have made this snake in one particular way, and that is by pouring molten or melted gold into a mould and letting the gold solidify. You have to heat gold to an incredibly high temperature to melt it, in fact over 1000 degrees Celsius. So it would have been a very hot and a very dangerous process. Now, the capital city of the Aztec Empire was a place called Tenochtitlan, and it was built on an island in Lake Texcoco, precisely where modern-day Mexico City can be found. Aztec culture is incredible, and there is still lots of evidence left for us to find and for historians to examine. Artifacts like this labret, pots, even some ruins of temples, Aztec pyramids, and other buildings too. But what happened to the Aztecs? Well, as with many civilizations, they came to an end after they were colonized by another country. And in this case, they were colonized by the Spanish Empire, which invaded the area in 1519 and took the land for its own. Now, this happened for hundreds of years across the world and by many different empires. The British Empire did very similar things all over the world, as did many other countries as well. And that is how lots of these incredible artifacts have ended up in different places all over the world, in museums all over the world. And museums today have to think really carefully about how we handle objects which were received, which we got through invading and colonising other countries. It's a really hot topic that museums have to think about today. Now, if you've enjoyed learning about the Aztecs and Aztec civilization, then head to the resource pack and have a go at some Aztec themed activities. And join me next time on Museum at Home as we explore Britain in the Bronze Age, thousands of years ago. So, see you next time for another Museum at Home.